Daughters of Wisdom are here to talk about contentment. We're going to talk about the seventh pillar of the 7 pillars of wisdom, contentment. But before we begin talking about contentment, I want to go through the other 6 pillars as a reminder.
Let's review.
Okay. Last week we talked about transformation, a great topic. Creativity, strength, honesty, wonder, compassion, and my favorite, common sense. Okay, Peggy, let's come up with a definition for contentment.
All right, we were talking about this earlier, and we did a little checking and research.
Yep.
So I think we agreed that earlier today that for today's discussion, we're going to define contentment as being emotionally satisfied with things just the way they are.
Just the way they are.
Okay. I really think that a quote from the life coach, Tony Gaskins, covers it quite clearly. It's this. It's to be content doesn't mean you don't desire more.
Yeah.
It means you're thankful for what you have and patient, keyword being patient, for what's to come. So his quote expands on what simply is true. We can't be content if we're constantly stressed out about what we don't have, where we are, that we don't want to be, or something along those lines. So,
and that's where patience comes in.
Patience.
We have to get over our need for instant gratification. So contentment is about right where you are right now, being content with where you are. And it makes me think about how striving for something that I don't have makes me feel not content with what I do have. Striving is actually a good thing. That's kind of how we grow. We want to get our education, or we want to do something different. But there can be a little bit about discontentment in striving. And I think it's that we're always looking for something else, and this feeling of having less than, or something that's just not good enough. In my opinion, we live in a society that breeds discontentment on purpose.
I agree.
I'm going to give a quick example, and Peggy's going to talk about this a little bit later, but fashion and new car designs, those are the 2 things that come
quickly to mind. Yes.
Come quickly to mind. I think it's also about allowing other people to tell you what you should be discontented with.
Yes.
Or you should be striving for. And I have this great story that I have to share.
I love this story.
So my husband and I were going to celebrate by making our last house payment in person. We were going to the bank. We were going to have a lunchtime celebration. All that went great. And at the end of our signing our check and getting our last little statement from the bank person says to my spouse, well, now you can afford to buy your wife a Mercedes.
Ooh,
We were kind of stunned, but I guess she thought now we had all this money, we could be making car payments. But it was interesting because she was doing 2 discontentment things. She was telling my husband that he wasn't the kind of guy who was going to be a good guy unless he bought his wife a new Mercedes and paid for it with a loan from the bank. And number 2, that I should be dissatisfied with whatever car it was that I had.
Yeah.
It was just amazing, really. It stuck with me for a really long time. That's been a long time.
Well, it's still sticking with you now.
It is. I can remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
So, discontentment.
Yes. And on another front, as Charlie mentioned earlier, fashion. Think about this, folks. Fashion is not just anymore just winter and summer. Now it's winter, summer, spring, or fall, and in between.
And there's a new word for fashion today. It's called fast fashion.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. So if you don't have it now, because in a couple of weeks it might be out of fashion.
Yeah.
Then you're not
fast fashion
content because
is.
you're taught that you need to have it,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the latest, you somehow feel inferior
Yeah.
or less than, or like you're lacking something. So what we do is we kind of talk a lot about minimalism, and for the reasons that that we're confronted with every day, we embrace minimalism ourselves, the idea of it, and it's because it affects so many facets of your life.
Yeah.
And you're previously constantly influenced by commercials and opinions.
Oh, gosh.
And good heavens, pretty much everything. So it causes insecurity in people. You kind of fight it, but if you look at your inside, you'll see it. You have an insecurity because you don't have whatever it is that you're supposed to have, or you're not doing whatever it is you're supposed to do.
And you might have been content, and suddenly you're discontented.
Discontent, yeah. So for those of you who aren't familiar with minimalism per se, let's give you just a very short. What we say about it, what the Daughters of Wisdom believe, is that minimalism, it doesn't mean you throw out everything in your house.
No.
It doesn't mean you throw out everything in the closet. It doesn't mean you suddenly go down to bare walls and nothing at all. What it really means is having just enough.
Yeah. I think it could contribute to being content with what you have now, to be patient for what you could have later. So kind of back to that question earlier, which is, does society breed discontentment on purpose?
I think so.
And I think it does.
Yes.
To somehow create this like psychological tension that gets you to change something, like go to the new beige, which is now gray.
Which is
it something as simple as making you dissatisfied when you look around your room at the beige walls, and you now learn that the new neutral is gray. It kind of creates this mental tension, this desire to get something better.
Yeah, and newer.
And newer. So it's really quite easy to become discontented and to lose your patience. So anyway, join the trend is what Peggy's going to tell you.
And it's minimalism.
Yeah.
It's cool. And it can save you money.
Yeah.
It'll probably save you time. Yeah. And you can be part of the minimalism gang. And at the same time, you won't be like so many of your other friends up to your eyeballs in debt. So it's something to think about.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's not something that's being demanded. It's something to think about and to realize where we're at. We always encourage people who listen to our podcasts, our YouTube videos, to think about what you're doing.
Yeah. And to think about why you might be not content. That's what minimalism is.
Yeah, because contentment is kind of going against the norm.
Yeah.
Of
Definitely,
our society, of
Peggy.
our everyday lives.
Yeah.
It's kind of going a little against the norm. And for the Daughters of Wisdom, we included contentment as one of our 7 pillars of wisdom because it encourages people, as we were saying, to use common sense, to think about the choices you make, to pause before jumping into whatever the latest trend is, whatever the latest thing is. It's because we, as the Daughters of Wisdom, want to encourage people to be who you are.
Yeah.
You are, not what somebody's telling you should be, and to be content with it.
Yeah.
So contentment, after all, is primarily mental,
Yeah.
unless you're starving.
Unless you're starving. And so is discontentment is also primarily mental if you think about it. So we thought we would close with another quote. We had Tony Gaskins in the beginning, and this is an anonymous quote. Contentment is not the fulfillment of what you want, but the realization of how much you already have. So anyway, That's the wrap-up definition of contentment for the week. And I want to announce that we're going to be starting a new 11-week Let's Talk series of videos. So we're pretty excited about it. And our first video next week is going to address 2 questions. How do you spend your spare time? And what does it say about you?
Sounds fascinating and fun. Get into
It
that
does.
one next week.
All right.
Meanwhile, do visit our Facebook page.
Yep.
Do visit our Pinterest. We'll put down an address or 2 right here,
Yeah.
and you can find us easily. Until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.